Thank you, Mansoor. Our next speaker has been in the field of AI since she worked on the iconic Watson project at IBM. Since then, she's held many roles as an AI strategist and executive, helping companies design and deploy effective AI strategies. Please welcome Sol Rashidi, former Chief Analytics Officer of Estee Lauder.
Hi everyone, my name is Sol Rashidi and I am absolutely thrilled and happy to be here at Juniper. I know there's a lot of information about AI coming at you, from McKinsey reports to Bain articles to Harvard Business Review. It seems like every media channel on earth is reporting on AI. And hopefully with today's next 20-minute session, I can actually ground us on a little bit of hype versus fiction, some applicable use cases, just some stats of how the space is really growing. But more importantly, just to teach the art of the possible while balancing things with risk exposure and maturity levels. Just a little bit of context and background as to who I am. By no means am I an academic, nor am I a researcher. I accidentally fell into this space. It's not something you choose to do, it chooses you. I thought I was gonna play professional sports the rest of my life. Until in my mid-20s, I realized, okay, I'm not gonna be a professional athlete, maybe I should be a professional. And I took the one job that no one wanted, and that was to be a data engineer. Fast forward, I joined IBM fairly early on in my career, and I owe a ton to IBM. And in 2011, when Watson beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy, IBM decided to take Watson to market. And when that team was being formed, I went with it, because you can't do AI without data, and I was the data expert within IBM at the time. I've been very fortunate, very blessed that I've had some wonderful roles with some great companies and great brands. And along the way, my team and I have developed some pretty cool things. Not without its issues, not without its challenges, because when you're trying something new, there's bound to be hiccups and face palms and scraped knees and bruised elbows and wounded pride along the way. But inevitably, there's always a rainbow at the end of the storm. And so this is a little bit of a journey for you. Now, I know you guys have a lot of facts coming at you. There's tons of articles, things from media channels to the Harvard Business Review, to McKinsey reports, to Bain, to LinkedIn. It is very overwhelming. For those of us who are in the space, it's overwhelming. We can barely keep up with it. So I just wanted to share a few facts and figures just to kind of ground us on the potential, the impact, and where it's going. This one's not going to be another fad. We may not be talking about it as much in a year or two, but it's fundamentally going to penetrate all the processes that we're aware of, and in various ways. So just to level set us, everyone's talking about it, but there is a fundamental priority that's been set at the board of directors level, and this conversation is being had within the board of directors and the executives. It's not as trending as blockchain was, or Web 3.0, or big data ecosystems, but applied AI and now generative AI is definitely dominating the top of the charts when it comes to what's being discussed and how companies are approaching their AI strategy. With that, however, most of the conversation's always around the applications, the use cases. What do we see in front of us? How can we use AI? There's been very little attention, unless you're in the scene, about the back-end infrastructure and what I call our defensive playbook. Because to fundamentally run these models, to get exposed to these consumer-based tools, there are a lot of investments being made in GPUs, CPUs, TPUs, workloads, and no one's talking about it, but even the electricity that's needed to be able to power these things. There was this fun fact that I had read that if everyone was leveraging AI at this point in time, we actually would not be able to support it because we don't have enough electricity being generated to support all the workloads. And so from this, you can kind of see the investments that China's making, that we're making, and then that the global economy in and of itself is making for stuff behind the scenes that we don't get to see. And what's interesting is a few partners and I had a conversation. We even think that this is underestimating the amount of investments that's being made behind the scenes to be able to power all the consumer-facing AI applications and tools that we get to use. Now, there's been some mixed results and mixed information around whether or not the VCs, the private equity firms, are they still investing? Is there still enough capital in the market space to invest in companies that are doubling down on AI? And the answer is, while unfortunately our brothers and sisters in cyber aren't getting the attention, or in software development aren't getting the attention, any company that's been born in the past year, year and a half, and continues to be born will actually get the lion's fair share of the investments that's going on within the VC world. specifically if there is emphasis on the generative AI capability. And last but not least, this is kind of one of my favorites. This was released by McKinsey last year. Facts aside, data aside, what this is telling us is it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It could be agriculture, it could be education, it could be energy, it could be manufacturing, it could be healthcare. There's several functions that are fundamentally being impacted by this, but sales and marketing actually happen to be the top two. Now, why sales and marketing? Well, for a few reasons. Marketing is a function that generates content, generates images, and generative AI fundamentally creates new with existing. So it's a space that's seen fundamental amplification and facilitation and amplification of the workloads. And so something that may take you 6 hours can now actually take you 30 minutes. It doesn't replace the job. It's not replacing your creative thinking and critical mindset and your judgment and your common sense and your aesthetics, but you actually get to leverage these tools to be able to amplify and expedite your work. No different than using email to communicate, no different than using Excel to be able to do tabulations and calculations, and no different than using Adobe to do a lot of your graphic design. It now becomes a tool in the toolkit for marketers. And on the sales side of things, I've helped some small companies and medium-sized companies, and what's the one thing that all sales functions have in common? They're not the best at data entry. So their job is really to pursue the client, build the relationship with the client, and have them go through the entire sales life cycle from lead generation to close. But a majority of their work is what? The communications and making sure that the proposals are in place. They have the necessary information to be able to take that sales and get it going through the funnel as quickly as possible. So when it comes to data entry into CRM systems, when it comes to understanding who you're talking to, the point of contact, a lot of that stuff is still done through email communication. So there's a lot of great capabilities that automates that, takes content from emails, auto-populates it into the CRM, so now companies don't have to be frustrated with their sales staff anymore. And I know these aren't the most glamorous use cases, but if you only understood how much time and energy is spent on this process alone, you'd have deep appreciation for it. Now, just to ground us, now that we've gone through some facts and figures and we understand the growth and where the investments are coming, let's talk about and switch gears into applications and some of the hype that's out there. So here's a little fun fact. AI and teenage topics, what do they have in common? Well, everyone's talking about it. No one really knows what the topic really is, but they assume the other person's doing it, so then they start claiming that they're doing it. And that's kind of what's happening with the AI scene. But in actuality, based on statistics that were shared last year, only 31% of the companies that are having the discussion really have something in production or in POC. People are still kicking the tires around it. They're still trying to figure out what it means for their organization. They're still trying to understand, is our risk exposure too much if we were to explore these capabilities? Or how do we combat the fears of job replacement versus it being more of an amplifier than a replacer? And so I'm very happy personally that large enterprises are taking the time to be deliberate about this stuff. I don't think it's too late to start by any means, but I do think everyone needs to start. Here's another statistic that was shared last year about the types of use cases that are really in deployment. And what's key here are the top two: customer operations and anomaly detection. I'll give an example. American Express has been doing anomaly detection for how many years now? Decades. And they are unbelievable at it. So it's not necessarily a new use case, it's just that others are finally coming on board and feeling more comfortable in deploying these use cases for their specific need. And then for customer operations, on average, by the time you hire someone, train them, have them shadow a customer call, and then put them into production, companies go through that process anywhere from 7 to 10 months to get someone you hired operational. They can now shorten that time frame to 2 to 3 months. How? Well, imagine you have a customer service department and you sell consumer goods. And someone calls and says, I want to know which one of your products are vegan-free or is vegan. Well, how's a customer service rep supposed to know that if they have 80,000 different SKUs within their product portfolio? It's nearly impossible. But to have a virtual assistant that has that information where they can type and understand which of the products are vegan-based is extremely powerful. So it's being used as a knowledge store. It's being used as a virtual assistant to be able to not only empower the individual servicing the call, but to actually operate as a better service provider for the customer that's calling in. And so again, not the most glamorous use cases, but these are the ones that are highly, highly used and in production right now. All right, so as I've mentioned, there's tremendous growth, there's tremendous opportunity. You guys are reading the hype in every media channel possible. But I do want to level set and I do want to ground us a bit. Any AI deployment is not a silver bullet. It's not a light switch that turns on. It's not a toilet you flush and it just automatically happens. There's a lot of time and effort and focus and alignment and grit and ambition and resiliency that goes into it. Even with tiny, really simple projects, there's still some time and focus and funding that needs to be spent. So just know that AI itself is not a silver bullet. And I think the second part of it is sometimes you just have to know the applicability. If you've got a business problem, lean on the experts and ask, do I need AI to solve this? Why use a sledgehammer to hit a nail on the head when you can use a hammer to get the job done? There are a lot of tried and proven technologies out there that would expedite the whole process because your goal is to fix the problem. Your goal is to address a business issue. Your goal is not to use AI for the sake of AI. So I always say, be very careful if the board of directors is asking for it. Be very careful if the executive committee is asking for it, because it's not about the technology, but it's about what it is that you're trying to do. And does AI not fit into that picture? Now, to further ground us, I've had the pleasure of working some phenomenal companies and help them develop their AI strategy. And I've presented to the board on numerous cases. I think the thing to also remember is with any deployment that's about to take shape or that's in discussion is be realistic about your current maturity levels and what you could reasonably deploy. It's very much a crawl, walk, run approach. After New Year's, everyone signs up for the gym, but you're not going to run the marathon in 2-3 months afterwards. It's a muscle that fundamentally has to be developed. And the same goes with AI projects, just because of the amount of discussions and alignment that's going to happen. So it's a muscle that has to be exercised. Think big, start slow, and then yes, you can scale quickly. Crawl, then walk, and then yes, you can run. So if you're developing an AI strategy, it's really important to be thoughtful about the next year, 2 or 3 years, but it's more important to be realistic about what it is you can actually deploy. And so I always say if you're developing your AI strategy, there's a series of things you need to assess from risk tolerance, data, infrastructure, talent, your ability to focus, the funding needed for it, and how many other strategic priorities exist right now within the company. And all of that will lead into 5 basic AI strategies from, is it efficiency-based, effectiveness-based, productivity-based, growth-based, or expert-based? And from there, you can then start ideating and come up with your use cases. Now, the other big thing around the hype is AI is not this big, hairy beast that's something to be scared of. It can be as simple as off-the-shelf solutions. So if you want to create better content, better client presentations, or you want to automate the entire note-taking process when you're on a sales call, so that instead of you having to actually take notes while you're having a discussion with the client, summarize it, put it into an email, and then have follow-ups, you can actually automate that process. It's something that I personally do right now. I used to take anywhere from 50 to 20 hours a week of just post-call follow-ups. And now I've been able to reduce that to 1 to 2 hours on my own as an individual by leveraging off-the-shelf solutions that are out there. But this is where connection really matters, and this is where understanding your capabilities really matter. If there's a slide to emphasize, I would say it would be this one. This is probably about my 13 or 14 years of scraped knees and bruised elbows summarized into one slide. And this is a framework of all the things that I've learned over the years. We don't have time to go into everything, but I am going to spotlight a few things like the ability to define AI first, or what does responsible AI even mean? I have a funny game that I play when I first join a company. I ask them to define governance for me. I ask them to define AI for me. And you ask 10 people, you're going to go over 100 different responses. But the fact of the matter is I always say there's 3 different definitions for AI. There's automated intelligence, augmented intelligence, and artificial intelligence. In all my years, I have not come across a single use case, at least for companies, where it required artificial intelligence. A lot of it is really focused on automated intelligence and augmented intelligence. So those use cases around the customer service reps, creating these virtual agents and these knowledge stores, is all around augmenting human capacity to do more and reducing the pressure off of them. And everything associated with automated intelligence is how do we create automation in the day-to-day manual repetitive tasks to streamline our efforts so that we can reallocate our human capital to stuff that really matters. And so it's always a good exercise, whether it's at the board level, the executive committee, or even middle management level, to just ground and level set on what AI really means. The second is validating AI, and I absolutely adore and love this graph from MIT. And this is a fun little exercise. I won't go through every single detail for you, but it's a really good way, and you can Google this as well, of helping executives and those that don't come from a technical background in understanding what is AI and what is not AI. So a fun little exercise, right? Can it see? If it can't see the system, the model, the algorithm, the machine, whatever it is you're working with, it's a no-brainer, it's not AI. Can it see? Well, yes, it can see. Can it recognize images? Yes, it's starting to recognize images. Well, now you're leveraging image detection and computer vision. You're starting to get into the approach of AI, in the realm of AI. And you can see, can it reason, can it hear, can it speak, can it interpret? And this is just a great litmus test so that you can explain to non-technical individuals what truly is the space of artificial intelligence. Now, another part that I think is very important for you to be successful is setting expectations. Watson beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy with a 71% accuracy score. For those of you who have children or nieces and nephews, when have they ever come home and got a C- on a test and you're like, job well done? You don't. And the fact of the matter is that 71% threshold is really low, but it was better than the human intellect. And so it got a lot of notoriety. And that's what kicked off the artificial intelligence wave. But it's important to know that even though we're at a lot better statistics than 71% right now, it's still not perfect. If you were to test some of these machines or models, can it tell the difference between a Chihuahua and a blueberry muffin? It struggles. I played one of the image generation tools and put salmon in water. Well, you and I will contextually know that that's not what we meant. It wasn't meant to be a salmon fillet, but a fish. But again, it didn't understand context. And one of the favorite ones that I actually saw on LinkedIn was someone typed in eggplant. You and I obviously know that that's not what we're talking about. So it's not perfect, it's not 100%, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it better than the human error rate that's happening within your business process that you're looking to replace with AI? And is there enough data where it could understand contextual understanding? Because right now, if it were to take the LSATs or the MCATs, it's doing a lot better than what humans would because it's a finite data set, which is something you should also take into consideration. Now, I'm not going to say last but not least because there's much more to the framework, but I think there's two really important elements as well. There's an element of fear around security and data leakage and the whole umbrella notion around responsible AI. There are many, many, many tenets to this, and unfortunately, we don't have time to get through all of this. But what I do want to let you know is for those enterprises that are fundamentally considering either developing off of a pre-built model or developing off of an API coming in from an LLM provider, I understand that data leakage is a concern, but there are so many companies that are solving this problem right now, Protopia being one of them, and a dozen others. But the intent is to make sure that when information is shared, it's the right information. And the second is really around human in the loop, which is something I personally experienced. I woke up one morning with a Google alert that essentially says, there's an article on Google, 100% about my husband. I woke up, my husband is like, did you write this? Did you verify this? He's like, I have nothing to do with this. And long story short, there was an SEO company that sold a service to a marketing company, and they chose keywords and they had articles, but the marketer who bought the service from the SEO AI-based company did not fact check anything, did not fact check the keywords, and somehow my name showed up in those keywords, and did not fact check any of the articles supporting those keywords. And you now have this bogus article that's on the internet that neither my husband and I are a part of. So if there's two takeaways from responsible AI is there are solutions in place to solve data leakage, data security. You just have to do the research. And I say it's not if we should do it, it's how we should do it. So it's not no, but it's how. And then don't ever replace anything else with human in the loop. We need our contextual understanding and our lens to make sure nothing goes off the rails. With that said, last but not least, data. I know we can't have AI without data. I know there's a ton of fatigue with this. But there's a few things that I want you to consider. Companies do a phenomenal job of collecting the data. We do a horrific job of connecting the data. So if you're trying to combine multiple data sets to be able to leverage and build an AI capability, just know you're going to have to dedicate some time in that data architecture because it hasn't been done before. The second that I think everyone underestimates is it's not necessarily the accessibility, and quality is always a concern, but the longest pole in the tent is actually getting alignment with your internal stakeholders from IT to InfoSec, to the compliance department, to the stakeholders of the risk exposure, what the tolerance level is, and what they're willing to do and take on versus what they're not willing to do. Believe it or not, those conversations can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months in that 9-month timeline. So I always say allocate 70% of your total project timeline just to the data discussions alone. And hey, if you get some of that time back, kudos to you. With that said, I really appreciate this. I thank Juniper for everything. This is wonderful. There's so many smart people out there. Leverage their talent, read up. It's an exciting space. I truly don't think AI is a trend, and it's going to be here to stay. We just have to be thoughtful and deliberate about it.